We are counting the days of the Omer from the beginning of Pesach until Shavuos. 49 days of account, starting from the second day of Pesach, until the day before Shavuos. Then we stop counting at 49, and Shavuos is the next day. Obviously, that means that the Torah is connecting the two holidays so that there's a continuous division, a continuous development from one to the second. In addition, all the holidays of the year are identified by their dates on the calendar, except for Shavuos. When the temple was standing, when the Sanhedrin was functioning, and they could celebrate the new month by sighting the moon, Shavuos came out either on the 5th or the 6th or the 7th of the month of Sivan. It didn't have a fixed calendar date. It exists only as the capstone of Pesach. What's the message? What are we supposed to learn from that? And how can we incorporate it into our preparation in this period of time to get to the holiday of Shavuos appropriately? Pesach in our prayers is called Zman Cherusenu, the time of our freedom. The word that's used for freedom is cherus. There are many words in Hebrew for freedom, and this one has a very specific connotation because the same letters compose the word charus, which means engraved. And the Torah describes the letters on the tablets that Moses brought down from Sinai as letters charus alaluchos, engraved into the stone tablets. My Rebbe Zatzal, the Boston Rebbe, told me that on Pesach, when you say now is the time of our freedoms, man cherusenu, what you should have in mind is the cherus, freedom of Pesach, is leading us to the engraved words of the 10 pronouncements on the tablets that we receive in Shavuos. What's the connection? What's the relationship? The Talmud tells us, the only truly free person is a person who occupies himself with Torah, which doesn't just mean learning Torah. It also means living a life of Torah. For many people, that's almost a paradox. The Torah is full of rules, and rules tell you what to do and what not to do, and thereby rob you of your freedom. How could you call a person free when he's bound by such a multitude of rules? The answer is that many rules have a two-sided existence. Yes, rules tell you what to do and what not to do, but those very same rules may be the key to accomplishing certain things which, without the rules, you could not function. For example, if you are sitting at a chessboard with chess pieces on the board, and you take the knight and move it 3 spaces straight forwards and take off the other person's queen, and he says to you, you can't do that, and you say, of course I can. It's very easy. Watch. And you do it again. And he says, no, you can't do that in chess. If you don't abide by the rules of chess, you can't play chess. More deeply and more significantly, there are rules of language. Someone says, and plus blue. Don't tell me how to talk. I talk as I please. He can say those words, but he can't communicate. The rules of language make communication possible. You want to engage in mutual communication, then the rules of language make that possible. Rules sometimes create the possibility of doing something significant. By the very limitations they set on you, they make that possibility available to you. The rules of the Torah make available to a person the greatest possible achievement. That achievement is a relationship with God, with the Creator, expressing the Creator's will in the universe, being a partner in the perfection of the creation, and therefore, the freedom that you have on Pesach, freedom from foreign compulsion, from the slavery to the Egyptians, that freedom is an expression of the ability to accept the rules of the Torah and thereby achieve a relationship with the Creator and participate in perfecting the universe. And that's what we're counting towards. We're counting towards an understanding, an internalization of the idea and the value, and the ability to receive the Torah on Shavuos, where those rules bring us close to the greatest position any human being can achieve.
With Shavuos approaching, festival of Shavuot and the giving of the Torah, let's think for a few minutes together about a subject fundamental to what Torah is. People think usually, common opinion, common idea, is that the Torah is a perfect description of reality. After all, the more science we discover, the more cosmology we discover, the more we see how Torah was there before, so to speak, and people understand that the Torah is a marvelous, miraculously accurate description of reality. And I would like to suggest to you that that's probably wrong. What's wrong about it is that if you think that the world is real and Torah comes lately and describes the world, that's the wrong order. We have sources that say, the Zohar says, that Hashem, that God looked into the Torah and created the world. That means the Torah was there first. 2,000 years before the world was created, the Torah was written. Therefore, the Torah is not a description of reality. If anything, reality is a description of Torah, an expression, a projection of Torah. So the correct concept is that the Torah was written. That is the genetic material, so to speak, that creates the world. The Torah is like a blueprint, obviously comes before the building. The builder then looks into the blueprint and executes it in the form of the building. But I think perhaps a deeper analogy, a more useful analogy, is that the Torah is like the genetic material that builds the body. Genes are not simply a repository of information, a library that describes the information that later becomes the body. Genes are the mechanism that actually creates the body. Genes are not simply a passive library of information. Genes are the library of information, but it's active and living. The genes then run a program that executes their knowledge and their information into the form of the body. Torah is exactly like that. Torah projects itself. If you will, it's like a film through which a light is shone, which projects itself on a screen. Torah is the film and reality is the screen. After all, we know that Avram Avinu, Abraham, figured out the Torah from the world. He looked into the world and figured out Torah. And King Solomon, who lived after the Torah was given, looked into the Torah and figured out the world. The Medrash says that he planted crops in Jerusalem that do not naturally grow there, because from his Torah knowledge he knew the lines of energy that flow from Yerushalayim to each place on earth, and on the lines that run to the places on earth where those crops grow, he planted them on those lines, and they grew in Yerushalayim. So the axiom is that the Torah is an expression of knowledge which then projects itself into reality. And this is very specific. Hebrew is the only language on earth, to the best of my knowledge, in which the word for a word is the same as the word for a thing. The word davar, word, means also an object. And the reason is that every object in the world is a crystallized word of Torah. How was the world formed? God spoke it into existence. His davar word became davar object. And therefore, the basic idea here is that the Torah is not an accurate description of the world. It's the reason the world looks that way. So the deep perspective we need to have is that the Torah doesn't get the world right because it knows it. It gets the world right because it caused it to be that way. The analogy that comes to mind is of the man walking in the forest who comes across an archer, and he's astounded to see that every arrow on every target, on every tree, is exactly in the center of every target. And he says to the archer, how can you have such incredible accuracy? And the archer says, it's easy. First I shoot the arrows, then I draw the targets. In other words, what came first? And so the answer is that the reason the Torah is such a perfect description of the world is because it's the reason that the world is that way. And therefore, when you look into Torah and you find a perfect description of some biological or genetic or cosmological phenomenon, one should not marvel that the Torah knows that phenomenon. One needs to know that the world is that way because the Torah says so. When Moses describes 4 animals that have unique biological features, and the Gemara makes it plain that those and only those animals have those features. People think, amazing, how did Moses know that? Did he know all of biology and all of the realia of the world? The answer is no. There could not be animals other than those that have those features because the Torah says so. The Torah doesn't describe a world. The Torah causes it to be that way. And of course, when people tell you that certain animals can't be eaten because they're unkosher, because they're unhealthy, it's not like that. It's not that they're unhealthy and therefore they're forbidden. It's that the correct order of things is that they're forbidden, and perhaps that's why they're unhealthy. The shellfish swimming around at the bottom of the sea, absorbing all the schmutz and filth at the bottom of the sea. That is not the reason that animal's unkosher is because he's unhealthy. First, he finds himself defined as an impure animal, and that could be the reason that he swims around in the unclean parts of the ocean. And so, in summary, the concept is Torah is a cause of reality. When one learns Torah, one's operating in the control room of reality. One's manipulating genes, so to speak. And therefore, I leave you with this thought. Torah is not just an after-the-fact description of the world. Torah is genetic material, and the world looks the way it does because Torah says so.
This will be a short talk about the holiday of Shavuot, but in order to understand the significance of the holiday that celebrates the receiving of the Torah, we need to focus a little bit on the extensive preparation that we have before Shavuot, and that is the period of 49 days, commencing from the second day of Pesach until Shavuot, that is called the counting of the Omer, Sfirat HaOmer. The Torah says that every single day, we count the number of days towards the goal of Matan Torah, the receiving of the Torah. What's interesting is the Sefer HaChinuch points out that by counting the days between Pesach and Shavuos, we are creating a thematic linkage between the holiday of freedom and the responsibility and submission to the will of God, to emphasize and underscore the point that freedom without responsibility, freedom without a goal of submission to something greater than yourself, is simply animalistic liberation, and it does not constitute human dignity nor any type of spiritual perfection. Our sages make the point that that is why the sacrifice that is brought on Pesach is a barley sacrifice, which was commonly eaten by animals. The sacrifice that was brought on Shavuot are loaves of wheat bread, which were fit for human consumption, because the transition from freedom to a freedom of submission to the will of God, which enables the self-actualization of the soul, is really the transformation of the animal into a human, godly person. The Indian poet Tagore, who of course was not at all Jewish and was not referring to Judaism, said it very well with a beautiful metaphor. He said, a human soul is like a violin string. It is capable of great, beautiful music. But paradoxically, if it's simply loose, lying on the table, totally free, unencumbered, not bound in any way, it will be absolutely incapable of producing any type of sound at all. Paradoxically, and on some level counterintuitively, it is only when it is tied down, only when it is restricted, only when it becomes part of the total instrument, is it then capable of generating the beautiful music within. And the human soul is that way as well. Western civilization, particularly in the United States, makes a fundamental mistake when it seems to proclaim that the goal and the purpose of life is freedom. Freedom, by definition, cannot be a goal. It cannot be a purpose, because the obvious question is going to be freedom to do what? Freedom to be what? Freedom may very well be a condition that enables the accomplishment of goals in life, but it can never be the goal itself. This is the linkage between Pesach and Shavuot, and essentially that means Shavuot is the conclusion of Pesach, which is why the rabbinic term for Shavuot is Atzeret, which means conclusion. Pesach and Shavuot are essentially one chag, one holiday. There is, however, one additional point, which I will just address very, very quickly, and that is during this period of the Omer, we are told that the 24,000 students of the great Rabbi Akiva died in a plague, and that is because they did not show proper respect and regard for each other. And we are instructed by our sages that this period of time we should try to emphasize seeing the good in others, respecting others, acknowledging their value and their validity. In many, many ways, these two themes, getting ready for the Torah and showing respect and recognizing the dignity of another, sometimes stand in contradiction, because it is human nature, as we become more fervent and passionate about our relationship to God, we sometimes disparage others. As we become more tolerant and liberal of others, we sometimes become less fervent and enthusiastic in our worship of God. The very fact that these two themes of Sfirat HaOmer coalesce and come together tell us that indeed it's not an either-or choice. We have to strive to do both. As we grow in our passionate relationship to God, we must accompany that with a proper regard and respect for the goodness and dignity of every human being and certainly every member of Klal Yisrael. Thank you.